For Carla, wrong place, wrong time. Evil's out there. They're sitting in a parking lot. They're watching our loved ones, watching us. It could be 10 o'clock in the morning or it could be 10 o'clock at night. And he was hunting.
Jim Walker remembers his sister Carla, who was murdered 50 years ago.
She had piercing, beautiful blue eyes. She had a smile that when she smiled, it took up her whole face. It was beautiful. She was 4'11", 95 pounds on a good day, high energy. And she had a walk that I remember. And when I would see that walk, I knew she was serious, which was a quick, short step walk where she could cover a room in just 2 or 3 steps, it seemed like.
In February 1974, 17-year-old Carla and her boyfriend Rodney were out after their school dance.
I remember everything because as I'm talking to you, I can see it in my mind's eye right now where everybody was standing. In Texas at that time, we kind of felt safe. Of course, there's a bad guy out there every once in a while, but we felt safe. And my parents never really put a curfew on my sisters. It was an undiscussed understanding that they're in at a reasonable time, like if they're out on a date, 12, 12:30, 1 o'clock maybe. This was a special event. In 1974, when Carla and Rodney went to the high school Valentine's dance, that was a big thing. Both the boys and the girls were excited. They dressed up in the suit. Rodney did, and most of the guys did. Carla, all the girls would, primp and get ready to look pretty for their dates and their appearance in front of their peers. That was a Saturday. Carla was getting ready and Mom was helping her get ready. She looked beautiful. Rodney showed up at the door and rang the front doorbell and came in, had the corsage and was smiling. And I believe my dad answered the door and he said, "I'm sorry, I'm late. I forgot my corsage." As soon as Carla saw Rodney, she had a beautiful smile came over her face, and Rodney walked up and pinned on the corsage on her pretty dress. And then pictures were taken.
Then the pair went to their high school dance.
About 1 o'clock-ish a.m. on Sunday, February 17th, my Aunt Dorothy said, "Shouldn't Carla be home by now?" And Mom said, "Well, they're going to be home soon. They'll be home soon." And about 1:30, my mom said to my dad, "Carla should be home now." They trusted Rodney. He could come into this house. He went on vacations with us. He's just a really good young man, raised right and just a good man. I remember there was a little bit of alertness about, now it's kind of getting over the limits, right? And that wasn't something normal for Carla or my other sister, Cindy. And at about 1:45, Mom and Dad and my aunt and uncle were still playing dominoes. My other sister, Cindy, had come back in from a date with her future husband. And so we were all waiting for Carla and Rodney to show up. Well, about 1:45 in that ballpark, I was standing in the living room just watching everybody. Nobody told me to go to sleep. I heard a sound that now that I know is a tire hitting a curb straight on very hard. And I heard my parents say, "What was that?" And then I heard Rodney's door open on his car. And as he opened up the driver's side door, there was like a little screech as if a hinge had not been lubricated. So it made a little bit of a screech noise. And then I heard Rodney yelling, "Mr. Walker, Mr. Walker, help me. They've got her. They're going to hurt her bad. I know they are." And then pounding on the door. I ran to the door and my sister Cindy was right behind me. I opened up the door. The porch light was on, waiting for Carla and Rodney to come back. And the porch light, as Rodney was looking at me through the screen door, was on the right side. So his whole right side of his face was lit up. The left side was in a shadow. And I remember as a 12-year-old kid looking at him, and I saw just a huge cut across his cheek going from near the inside of his eye down toward his ear, and blood on his head. And by then, Dad had gotten to the door, opened up the door, and Rodney was saying, "Mr. Walker, they've got her. We're in the parking lot behind the bowling alley." And a man came up in the dark, and Rodney also said, "I'm shot. I think I'm shot." And so we got Rodney into the kitchen area, and my dad said, "Jimmy, go get a rag, a wash rag."
Rodney said the couple had been ambushed where they parked at a bowling alley parking lot after the dance. Rodney was injured, and Carla was dragged from the car.
My dad had confirmed where this took place, and he'd already been moving to get his gun, and everything went crazy, warp speed then, and law enforcement was notified. Dad was out looking for Carla.
2 days later, Carla's lifeless body was found. The kidnapped teen had been raped, strangled, and dumped in a ditch, authorities said. Police looked for answers, starting with Rodney.
We never thought Rodney did it. As the timeline developed over days, months, years, decades, there started to be some questions. Never thought Rodney did it.
Despite the efforts of law enforcement, Carla's case went cold.
I've never met one law enforcement officer in the city of Fort Worth working on my sister's case that did not want to solve not only her case, but all the other cases. And, by definition, they're determined to be code because there's nothing else to follow up on.
Finally, in 2019, things began to happen.
This is a case, to this day, it breaks my heart.
Paul Holes, the legendary investigator who helped break the Golden State Killer case through DNA, came on board to look at Carla Walker's cold case.
Part of what I did working with Fort Worth is that we need to revisit every single item of evidence in this case, and most notably, Carla's clothing. So I had Carla's clothing sent off to a screening lab that I had used before out in the Bay Area. The lab did an amazingly thorough job at looking at Carla's clothing and found some male DNA, one spot off of her bra strap and another spot off of her dress that previous examinations had just completely missed. And so it's like, score. So now I said, we're going to use this genealogy lab that I used in Golden State Killer, right? So get that sample over there.
Paul joined forces with Texas DNA lab, Othram.
Othram is the first lab in the world that was purpose-built to use the most advanced genomics techniques to identify victims and perpetrators from crime scenes. That's all we do. We identify DNA that was found at a crime scene, whether it belongs to the perpetrator or the victim. Our mission was to be able to make every case tractable. We truly don't believe it's justice unless every case can come to resolution and get an answer.
When you're a survivor of a cold case murder, you become a member of a club you don't want to have anything to do with. And this technology is going to let members of this club know that you're not alone now, nor have you ever been. It just took science time to catch up.
In the summer of 2020, science caught up for Carla Walker, as the team working her case found a DNA match for the perp.
And it landed on a suspect whose name was already in the Carla Walker case file, this Glenn McClurry.
Glenn McCurley lived less than a mile from the Walker house. And while Jim says his family didn't know him personally, they knew of him.
And an interesting thing about McCurley, February 16th, 1974, the day of Carla and Rodney's Valentine's dance, was his 11th wedding anniversary. Married 2 kids, but his wife and 2 kids had gone to Midland, staying until Sunday night. And so they drove out there Saturday morning. McCurley got off work. We have his time card at 4:30, and he, was he mad? Was he pissed off because his wife and kids are gone? He's a narcissistic psychopath. It's always about him. He learned to control it after the heat started getting on him. But I have to think he got off work, per his testimony or his statement, and he started drinking and driving, and he started hunting for somebody to do this to on his 11th anniversary. The bowling alley is also about a mile from where he lived. Rodney was a probably 150-pound, high school senior, and Carla was 95 pounds, and it was dark, and he had been drinking all evening whiskey and beer, and he just saw the opportunity and was trying to get his courage up most of the night. Guys like that, they are not brave. They're very weak. They're very cowardly. Because, he didn't try something like that on a man my size because he knew it would not go well for him. But he saw a high school boy, clearly had been at some formal. Rodney had a suit and tie on. Carla had a nice dress with her corsage on her dress. I think if Carla hadn't been there, McCurley would have gone home and just passed out. But that's not what happened. Rodney lived with guilt for decades because he felt like he would tell me, he said, I felt like I let Colonel Walker down. I've been able to reassure Rodney, you were an 18-year-old boy who'd never experienced anything like this, kissing your girlfriend in a dark parking lot. You are a victim, and you're also a victor because you survived, and because of you and your wherewithal, we've identified the perpetrator. You're a part of resolving Carla's crime, and things are going to be better because you never gave up either. But Rodney suffered greatly. My dad showed much kindness and mercy. My mom did too, and Rodney was still welcomed in this house anytime.
Police say they have solved the kidnapping and murder.
We are learning new information about an arrest in a 40-year-old cold case.
In August of 2021, Glenn McCurley was convicted of Walker's murder. He was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. 2 years later, he died behind bars at age 80.
He died in prison, so God's good. We lost Carla, but because of what happened to Carla, we're going to be able to take a lot of bad people off the streets. God's brought a whole coalition of people together who have a common goal.
That common goal is to help bring the DNA resources used in Carla Walker's case to wider use as part of a federal bill named after her.
So the Carla Walker Act is twofold. One, it's federal grant money in order to use scientific data to, essentially solve cold cases. But it's twofold in that it helps deal with emerging technology and not just existing technology, and how we go about testing old DNA, old genomes, all of those different things in order to help local law enforcement solve what we call cold cases.
What this technology allows investigators to do is to not wait, to move it to this new technology, build a profile that is more comprehensive, has hundreds and hundreds of thousands of markers that will allow you to infer someone's identity, whether they're in a database or not. We upload to these databases that are consented for law enforcement use, but we don't look for self. We built these profiles that allow you to find a sixth cousin, a fifth cousin, a fourth cousin, a third cousin. It allows law enforcement to get unstuck in their investigation. It allows them to be able to say, okay, now I have a lead. I'm going to take that. I'm going to figure out if anybody from this family belonged in that area at the time. Did they own the type of weapon that was used for the crime? Did they own the kind of car that was seen at the crime scene? Did they know the victim? And then if they can get enough corroborating information, they get a warrant for their DNA, and they confirm it using standard DNA testing that has gone to court for 30 years already. Unfortunately, the only thing that prevents law enforcement from using this technology is funding. The average is about $7,500 to work a case from evidence to answers, prepare the reports necessary to go to a courtroom, testify in the courtroom, etc. The Carla Walker Act allows for funding for testing for law enforcement agencies. It allows for funding for these state labs to adopt the technology.
This is smart criminal justice policy, which is where we want to be, particularly from the federal level. And it's how the federal government can actually help the locals without coming in and forcing too many requirements on different people. It's allowing them the resources to go back into their files and utilize the one thing they don't have, which is necessarily the technology or the funding to do it. This is giving closure to victims. This is making sure bad people get put behind bars and making sure innocent people don't. And me personally, I think this is a very good prioritization of federal funds.
There's so many other Carla Walker cases. Every one of them are equally sad in their own way. I think my parents would have been thankful that the Carla Walker Act is being discussed and debated in the halls of Congress. I know that my parents now they're happy that they're holding Carla. Carla's not ever going to be forgotten. According to prosecutors I've spoke with, judges, her case is going to go into law books through criminal courses that future lawyers have to study because of the FGG, the forensic genetic genealogy. Her case is the first one. Carla's kind of like the Medal of Honor. She wanted to be a veterinarian. She loved animals. One of those gentle spirits with animals. Academically, she could have achieved that. So I didn't get to see her graduate high school or college. I didn't get to see her get married. I didn't get to, be at the hospital with our family as she's having her first child, right? Those things I know are for another time. In another life, I'll get to see her again, and I'm excited about that.